Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today we're getting to our running back rankings for week 12 of the fantasy football season. I'll be ranking my top 30 here, covering just about every matchup this week. Getting this video out to you early. You'll see the majority of our content come out earlier this week with Thanksgiving, the game on Friday as well, if you forgot about that. And then we also have, obviously, the full Sunday slate as well. So wide receiver start sit will come out tomorrow. But again, the top 30 here, helping you set your lineup. If you guys enjoyed today's video, be sure to hit that like button for me. And as well, if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We'll be helping you win your fantasy football championships. We're getting late into the regular season, soon to the playoffs. Let's get into these rankings. Okay, starting with our first 6 running backs off the board. And as it always is, in one spot is Christian McCaffrey. As long as he is playing, there's only one game this season where he hasn't scored a touchdown. He gets Seattle. Seattle's run defense has really tumbled over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks now. They rank 26th in fantasy points allowed to the position and 17th in EPA. They used to be a top 10 unit in both of these categories not too long ago, but now have really fallen off. So for McCaffrey, pretty much every matchup he'd be my RB1, but in this matchup, it does look to be a better one than it did a few weeks ago. So feeling good about him there. In the 2 spot is Travis Etienne, a team that is a little bit different than Seattle that they're playing here in Houston. Houston's a team that a lot of us expected to be really, really poor against the run, as they have been for the last number of seasons. They have turned things around to be about an average unit. That's a good thing for Etienne, who obviously has that lead back role in this offense, gets all of these valuable opportunities and gets a really good volume as well. But Houston on the season, 17th in fantasy points allowed, 16th in EPA. So again, more of a middle of the road unit. 3, David Montgomery. Yes, I'm going to have David Montgomery ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs in my rankings. Comes down to the fact that the biggest value for running backs against the Packers is on the ground. They've been brutal against the run, ranking 25th in EPA against the run. They're now 24th in fantasy points allowed. This is a team for the last number of years has been brutal against the run. That does not change here with one of the best running games in the league from Detroit. 4, Isaiah Pacheco. Man, Pacheco ran like, as he always does, like a bat out of hell in that game against Philly yesterday. Was very, very good despite the tough matchup. Now gets a great matchup. Good chance to find the end zone as well against this Raiders defense that's 27th in fantasy points allowed to the running back position. 5, off a number of bad weeks, is Derrick Henry, but great matchup. One of the best matchups you can have in fantasy football for your running backs. So start Derrick Henry with some confidence against the Carolina Panthers, who are 31st in fantasy points allowed, 32nd in run defense grade, dead last in run defense grade from PFF. So an excellent opportunity here to find production with Henry, who you've of course spent your second round pick on earlier in the season. Maybe you traded for him and you've been disappointed. Definitely like the bounce back here. 6, Jonathan Taylor. I don't love the matchup. Tampa Bay is a team that has been stout against the run. We saw it even against San Francisco this past week, despite McCaffrey finding the end zone. On the season, they're 2nd in fantasy points allowed to the position. They're fourth? Yeah, they're 4th in EPA against the run. So this is a really tough team to run the ball on. But with the Colts offense, you're going to see Jonathan Taylor getting the ball a ton at a really high volume. Zach Moss has completely been phased out of this offense. So regardless of matchup, Taylor's going to be a good start for you moving forward. At 7, DeAndre Swift, this Bills defense. One that's been, I think over the last couple of weeks, with the losses they've had at the linebacker spot, they've improved a fair bit here. 10th in EPA against the run. They're 19th in fantasy points allowed. Swift, again, running behind this offensive line, is going to be an efficient back. He's getting some good usage in the receiving game too. You're not seeing much of Kenny Gainwell. You're not seeing much of Boston Scott. And in this offense, that's incredibly valuable. Only downside is, of course, Jalen Hurts with the tush pushes, stealing a number of goal line opportunities from him. That's definitely a downside. 8, Bijan Robinson. New Orleans is definitely not an easy matchup. 3rd in fantasy points allowed this season. But for Bijan, we come off of the matchup 2 weeks ago where he took over with some significant volume and significant share of the offense over Tyler Algier. I'm confident in him being a top 12 guy week in and week out the rest of the season. At 9 is Alvin Kamara. Similar here to what we have with Bijan, in that Kamara is someone who has a very difficult matchup. This Atlanta team is 1st in PFF's run defense grade, top 5 in fantasy points allowed, top 5 in EPA against the run. But Kamara saves his week in and week out with the receiving game. So expect that volume to continue here against this Falcons defense, and him to be able to, getting 20 plus touches and being able to do enough with them to be a top 12 guy. 10, Jerome Ford. Love the matchup here for Ford. Denver, absolutely terrible against the run. When you look at what Madison and Chandler did last week on Sunday night, you're going to be able to get great production from Ford, who's going to see 20 plus touches in this game. When you look at the fact that we're starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the passing offense doesn't have much of a pulse. They'll be leaning on their ground game plenty because this is where the advantage is here. Denver's pass defense is improved significantly. The run defense is still terrible, so be sure to be starting Ford this week. Expect him to be a top 12 guy. 11, Austin Eckler. Eckler's fallen down in my rankings because I don't know what's up. Is he hurt? Because that run against the Packers, I'm sure a lot of you guys saw it, the run along the sideline was like fullback or, offensive lineman Edelman type of speed running down the sideline that you should be able to break a touchdown, and Austin Eckler of the past would be breaking a touchdown. So his vision when it comes to running the football is really seems like it's completely deteriorated. And when you look at the receiving game, he has not been getting enough of those opportunities lately, which is really concerning. But again, this is the top guy for an offense that can score points. Touchdowns can definitely be the opportunity that we find with Eckler. So still enough here to be a top 12 guy for me. And Jahmyr Gibbs, both Lions running backs in my top 12. I expect the Lions, much like they did against the Packers earlier in the season, to dominate this game. Both of these guys will see significant opportunities. Gibbs was second on the team last week in receptions as well, so he's doing a great job in the receiving game and obviously eating into Montgomery's opportunities in the rushing game. But Montgomery does have that slight edge where I see a little bit more value here for Montgomery being that guy against this Packers defense. 13, our RB2s on the week. Josh Jacobs getting Kansas City. Kansas City has been really, like, I thought they were pretty solid this past week against the Eagles, who have obviously a fantastic rushing offense. I think this is a team that just overall defensively is very, very good. And for the Raiders, with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, I know they managed to stick in the game with the Dolphins last week. Do think this is a game with the Chiefs coming off the home loss, dominate here as they have against the Raiders in seasons past. So still feel good about Jacobs because the volume will be there for him regardless of game script, but just don't feel like, he's going to get those touchdown opportunities to be able to, of course, get into the top 12 of the position. 14, Tony Pollard. Look, Pollard's a player that right now, if you're not getting a top 5 matchup, I can't put him in my top 12 because obviously he found the end zone last week, had a good week, which was sorely needed and expected against the Panthers defense, but that touchdown didn't come till really late, and it came outside of the red zone. Like he barely crossed the goal line, barely got into the end zone without having the knee down. So without that, it would have been a really extremely disappointing week for Pollard. So I am concerned about him moving forward. Washington, pretty middle of the road matchup, 18th in fantasy points allowed, 20th in EPA against the run. So honestly, this is still a matchup you're going to play Pollard because the volume will still be there for him. 15, Rachaad White. Got to feel good about White in this matchup because even in down matchups, he's found ways to be productive. But here, I expect him to run a little bit more efficiently and potentially as well find the end zone and do what he does in the receiving game. The Colts, 29th in fantasy points allowed to the position, 26th in run defense grade. So a good opportunity here for White. Definitely a guy you want to start. 16, Saquon Barkley. Barkley has been a guy that I've constantly said to you is a top 12 guy in the vast majority of matchups because of how good the volume is for him. It's just about the offense moving the ball. They did last week and he had a great week. New England. What I like about New England is their run defense. I think it's by far the best part of their defense. They're first in EPA against the run, but they are 16th in fantasy points allowed. So they're more middle of the road there. I think the Patriots can bounce back in this game. The Giants obviously have found their footing a little bit here, but I don't think it's very legitimate offensively with Tommy DeVito at quarterback. So I think the Pats can really have an answer here defensively against the run. That makes Barkley still a guy I want to start, but not a guy I see with a ton of upside. 17, Joe Mixon. Look, with Jake Browning at quarterback, this is going to be the Joe Mixon show, I think, and would expect to see moving forward. And Pittsburgh's a good matchup for running backs. On the season, they're 25th in fantasy points allowed, 23rd in EPA. Mixon's probably not going to find many weeks where I'm getting him into my top 12, but the volume should be there for him to be a very consistent, solid RB2 where the touches will be high. And anytime this team gets into the red zone, he's going to be the guy they look to score those points for them. 18, Gus Edwards, a great matchup with Los Angeles. The Chargers are 20th in fantasy points allowed, 22nd in EPA against the run. They're a good run defense. They're just a bad defense. So that's going to lead to opportunities for Gus Edwards to score touchdowns as he's been doing all season long, as we saw him do against the Bengals last week with 2 touchdowns as well. 19, Breece Hall. Look, the fact of the matter is the Jets have no passing game whatsoever for any defense to respect. Yes, Zach Wilson is being benched, but Tim Boyle is coming in, and let me tell you, Tim Boyle is not going to be a vast improvement at quarterback for this Jets offense behind this offensive line. Hall will be the focal point of the offense. He's going to get plenty of opportunities. Saved his week last week with the receiving yards and receiving touchdown. Moving forward, great matchups. He's going to be a top 12 guy. Mediocre to bad matchups. He's going to be somewhere in this area because of how much opposing defense can just game plan to stop the run, because the efficiency there was brutal for him. And again, he's got Miami, a team that can move the ball pretty well and can build up a lead here against this Jets offense. So game script might not be good, but on the season, Miami isn't the greatest run defense, 29th in EPA against the run, so you can find some success there. 20, James Conner, getting the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams have been a team pretty middle of the road in terms of run defense. We kind of know what we're getting from Conner in terms of being the clear-cut RB1 in the offense. He's going to be able to put together some receiving work, and honestly, where the Cardinals are playing, he gets a bump from the fact that, of course, the Cardinals are a more competitive team with Kyler Murray at quarterback, so feel good about James Conner as the RB20 on the week. 21, Ramondre Stevenson. I think he's getting a little bit of disrespect here, flying under the radar. I like what we have in this matchup against the Giants. 28th in fantasy points allowed, 24th in EPA against the run. I think Ramondre can run effectively, and then as well, the involvement in the receiving game will definitely be there too. It'll be about, that split with Ezekiel Elliott when it comes to the opportunities in goal-to-go situations. Will he get those to be able to elevate himself closer to, a mid-tier RB2 as opposed to the back end where I have him right now? 22, Jaylen Warren. Got the news that Matt Canada is fired. That is fantastic news because because that guy is a terrorist to this offense. Perhaps we see Jaylen Warren get an edge in touches and opportunities. Maybe that's more of Mike Tomlin than it is Matt Canada in terms of that personnel. But regardless, Warren is the better back. He's the more efficient back. He's going to get more involvement in the receiving game. And the Bengals have now become the worst defense against the run. They're 32nd in EP against the run. They're 22nd in fantasy points allowed to the position. Now that they're missing Burrow and the offense is going to have some troubles, you're going to see teams be able to run the ball a little bit more because there's more likelihood they're going to be in those positive game scripts to do it. So like Warren moving forward, but it's hard to get him a little bit any higher than this just because we still aren't seeing that edge over Harris in the touches department. 23, Raheem Mostert against the Jets. The Jets are still a good run defense. They're 7th in run defense, great from PFF, 11th in EPA against the run, 23rd in fantasy points allowed. That is because this is an offense they have that's not moving the football, so teams are in a good game script to run the ball. Devon Achane, I think there's a decent chance he doesn't play. I do have him in my rankings here. If he doesn't play, Mostert will definitely move up a little bit further than this and into probably the RB like 18, 19 range, probably just in front of Breece Hall. But for right now, this is where I'm going to have him expecting Achane to play. But again, if he doesn't, some context for you guys. Again, this is a Dolphins offense is moving the ball effectively, and the better way to move the ball against the Jets is on the ground because their pass defense is, of course, probably the best in the league. 24, Kyren Williams. I did just read a report this morning before we started that they're expecting Kyren Williams to play. I honestly feel like I should have him probably higher here. So if he does for sure play, he's probably more in my RB, looking at my rankings here, probably RB 17, just ahead of Joe Mixon. I mean, Kyren Williams is a fantastic asset for you. We saw when he was available, the touches were really, really high. The Rams really like to run the ball when they get into goal-to-go situations. So I feel good about Williams because, again, the receiving profile is good for him. And I would expect, the Royce Freeman, the Darrell Henderson to take a significant backseat to him because this is really an offense at the running back spot that lacks a lot of talent. And not to say Kyren is some fantastic talent, but he's definitely a guy they like a lot more than these two. So feel good about him if he's back. 25, Najee Harris. Mentioned the matchup. Harris is still getting his opportunities and being the guy with the edge in the running game. And again, the edge here against the Bengals team is definitely running the football. 26, Devon Achane. Definitely think that if he does play, he's someone you do want to start. But again, the knee injury is a little bit of a concern. So take a bit of a bump here just with that concern of re-aggravation, which he did already last week. So they could take an approach that's a little bit safer, and maybe he doesn't play this week as well. 27, AJ Dillon. I'm going off the fact that we're not going to see Aaron Jones. If we do, I probably wouldn't play either one of these guys, to be completely honest with you, because Detroit is a great run defense, 8th in fantasy points allowed this season. But I expect no Aaron Jones and then no the Wilson kid they had added and played a little bit this past week. I expect both those guys not to play. Dillon to have the backfield to himself, but the matchup has him as a flex option at best in my mind. 28, Javonte Williams. I think the Broncos are going to struggle immensely to move the ball, so I don't really feel great about Javonte against this run defense, especially when you see, Samaje Perine getting on the field in the receiving game, Jaleel McLaughlin on the field, spelling him a little bit. Williams has the edge over these two guys, but it's not significant enough that I feel really good about playing him against an elite run defense that's 2nd in EPA against the run this season. So not loving Williams, but still enough opportunity to make him a flex option for me. Speaking of guys I don't love this week, but have the RB1 role, Zach Charbonnet. Don't expect Kenneth Walker to play on Thursday, but San Francisco, 5th in fantasy points allowed to the running back position. We know how good they've been against the run all season. And for Charbonnet, I know the opportunities are there, but I don't think the matchup is good enough to feel really good about playing him. And I just, again, if Geno Smith isn't playing and we get Drew Lock, I really think the offense falls off. So there's a lot of things in my mind to be concerned about too when it comes to this matchup for Charbonnet. 30, rounding things out, Brian Robinson, Dallas's defense, 9th in fantasy points allowed, 8th in EPA against the run. Robinson seeing that involvement in the receiving game, which is really good and elevates his value and keeps him inside the top 30 for me. But again, the matchup, not great. Dallas defense is a very difficult matchup for running backs and really any fantasy asset that you have. Okay, some players that are outside of my top 30. Look, there's a lot of volume here at the running back spot and options for you to go to, but I do want to cover some players that I probably wouldn't be starting. Let's start with the Minnesota backfield. So both Alexander Mattison and Ty Chandler are outside my top 30. Chicago is a matchup where if you're in the positive game script is going to give value to the running back position, but Chicago's been a great run defense this season. I do want to respect that, and I do think this is a game that Chicago is going to compete in. And between these two guys splitting opportunities, and of course for the Vikings struggles to run the ball effectively, I think Chandler's the better back, but we haven't been seeing the opportunities reflect that. I am just with these guys competing for touches, there's just not enough here for me to want to play them. Keaton Mitchell, my RB32. If he's getting more opportunities and more touches, I feel much better against Los Angeles, but that's not the case right now. Kareem Hunt is someone you could play, but he's just very touchdown dependent against this Denver team. And then we also have Devin Singletary outside my top 30 as well. Jacksonville, elite run defense. They're going to give you some major trouble. We saw that against the Titans with Derrick Henry. And then James Cook, Philadelphia, really bad matchup for running backs. Cook is a guy who also found the end zone last week, but typically is not the one getting those red zone touches or those goal to go type of carries. So don't feel good about him this week. He is definitely a player I do want to sit. That's pretty pretty much everyone I have here on my list. If there's anyone that I did miss that you guys want to hear about, or maybe a surprising player that I missed to hear why they're not in the rankings, definitely drop those comments down below. And of course, any decisions you're looking to make at the running back position when it comes to starting or sitting, I will definitely look to answer those. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.